Welcome everyone, this is Danny Knox from Parallel Software. We're about ready to get started with our Parallels Mac Management V7 for Microsoft SCCM. Really happy to announce the availability of our latest version, version 7. A lot of really nice new features we'd like to talk about today. So why don't we go ahead and get started. We will have time for questions afterwards, so if you have those along the way, just keep those at the ready and we'll make that time available. So thank you for your kind attention and taking part of this release announcement today. All right, let's move along here. Parallels Mac Management. We're a part of a broader set of tools that really enable cross-platform capabilities within an IT organization. Kind of sandwiched there in the middle between Parallels Remote Application Server for publishing applications, VDI, out to just about any endpoint on top of all the major hypervisors running on RDSH. You're able to get a nice delivery. It's a direct compete with Citrix, less complex, if I can say complex, and then also less expensive. And then on the other side of the spectrum, our flagship product, Parallels Desktop for Mac Business Edition, started off with a consumer product that made its way into the enterprise, and the enterprise needs to manage everything, so we do now have business and professional editions to go along with our consumer edition, but great business continuity application for those needing to run Windows or over 100 different operating systems you can run on a Mac without rebooting it. That's the big issue, right? If you want to run boot camp, you have to shut down. You've got to carve out a hard drive space, a partition for boot camp to run Windows, and then you're forever, shutting down and coming back in if you want to run the Windows operating system. Well, the genius behind Parallels Desktop for Mac is that we run it in a virtual machine, so you have the full use of the Mac and the Windows environment or the other operating systems that you may want to put on there with cut and paste, drag and drop integration. So it is a very nice tight integration with the Mac host operating system. But we're talking about Parallels Mac Management right there inside the middle for SCCM, and let's continue on. A lot of partners, a lot of great folks out there. As you can see, the brand names, people that have come to rely on the products that we develop here at Parallels. So we really appreciate all these folks for their kind patronage over the years, and just great partnerships over the many years that we've had with them. So you also see here for Parallels Mac Management, some of the folks saying really nice things about us, but we really appreciate how we're able to assist with what they need Parallels Mac Management to do for them. And more traditional, 90-95% Windows dominant IT shops, it's what do you do with that last little bit of device management, and we're able to assist with what they're doing to bring compliance and automation and everything that you'd expect device management to have inside of an organization. So we really appreciate the different partners here that we've been able to develop. And really, let's just kind of state that case. What do you do in a 90% Windows environment, 95%, where you only have a percentage of Macs left to manage, or other devices, right? I mean, that last percentage could be, Chromebooks, Linux, Unix, of course, Macs, whatever that, those endpoints are, it becomes kind of a long-term, oh, wow, what do I need to do here to manage devices? And we know what to do on the Windows side, but when it comes to compliance and everything else we need to look at for endpoint protection, we really don't know what that looks like. And do we really want to invest in, what's out there? I mean, do you stand up, something just for that 1% to 2%? And that's really where it kind of ends up being. And we go to a lot of the shows, the different like MMS in Minnesota and Experts Live, different System Center user groups, and we ask them, okay, what are you doing to manage Macs? And it's usually like not really anything, because it sounds too expensive, right? Just for that 1% or 2%. And we hear, through Apple's great marketing, think different. Macs are just different. We can maybe just not manage them, right? They're very secure. So, they just kind of lend themselves to just being out there. Well, we'd never leave a Windows endpoint unmanaged. And if you really think about it, take that nice shiny Apple logo off the back, cover that for a few minutes. It's an Intel chipset. It's got hardware and software on it that really look like what we manage on a day-to-day basis inside of SCCM to begin with. So we really might want to start thinking about what to do for Mac management, especially now with GDPR in full force. So, there's maybe some reasons why we really need to look at this. And here's a little bit more that builds into the confusion about how to manage Macs. Full grid here of 30 propositions, including parallels, for different ways to manage what's on a Mac, the full Mac itself, anything from the full Apple management capabilities of some of the offerings here to things like Google Santa. It really sounds funny, but it's exactly what it is. It's a naughty or nice list for application compliance on a network if you want to manage that. But then you could put some things together, maybe Puppet, Chef, Apple Server. You've got Apple Remote Desktop. Maybe you want to use Reposado for patching. So you could, do what some of these full-featured Mac-only management capabilities do with maybe 3 or 4 things. And if you've got somebody that does that, that's awesome. But that's usually the person who finds it really exciting to create something, but when they're done, they want to move on to something else, and then you lose that person. Heaven forbid they leave the company. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can manage, and a lot of ways you're probably going, yeah, I don't know if I really want to stand up another silo or not. So what do you do? You're still at that point. What do I do? Do we, just leave our Macs alone? The end users, they kind of look at each other like, well, the Windows guys can do tickets and get support, but we're just not really, knowing where to go. Maybe there's a really super smart, Unix, Linux, kind of person that we can talk to, but there's no dedicated support, and so Mac users are just left on their own. And then again, there's the Windows folks, living in their paradise. They've got SCCM, full device management, it's scheduling, it's automation, it's applications, packages, configuration items, all the resources you can bring to bear for software metering and deploying things like BitLocker and managing all of that inside of one tool set. And it just makes sense for a 95% Windows environment, right? So then what do? We really suggest looking at something like Parallels Mac Management for SCCM. For that remaining percentage, use the plugin that we have to add the functionality for full Mac management inside of SCCM. And that's really it. Let's keep it simple. Well, that's IT, right? Let's maximize what we have. Being able to leverage the infrastructure, the full SCCM capability that we can add our plugin to, so we can find and engage our Macs for management inside of SCCM like we would for any of the Windows devices, for all of the same reasons, for management, for software, for distribution, inventory. And that just provides us with the synergy of using a known tool with the known admins that we already have. And so again, Apple's done such a great job in think different that we don't even go to think about how a device like a Mac could be brought into SCCM. And again, just remember, it's an Intel chipset. It's got hardware, software, capabilities within it that can be fully managed. Okay, so on the Windows side, this looks pretty normal, right, for what you do. Discover, enroll, we have to know where they are to bring them in, and then we can do an inventory. Always need to know what's there, hardware and software. And then right in the middle, compliance. Automation for BitLocker and policy, group policy, compliance settings that we need to have on our devices to make them more well managed and taking care of them remotely, basically. And then adding in daily things like software deployments for applications and packages, patching, WSUS integration. Patch Tuesday comes around, we know how to take care of our unpatched devices. And then getting new operating systems out there. If you use MDT or SCCM for an OSD deployment type of scenario, I mean, that's just a part of SCCM, right? But then reporting everything that we've done thus far, everybody needs a report, right? Security wants to know how many devices have BitLocker on them, and the software procurement team wants to know who's using or not using software, so they can reallocate licenses and make sure that their software spends are appropriate. I mean, that just kind of makes sense, right? And that's what we do on a daily basis. But you could do that on a daily basis for Macs. That's what Parallels Mac Management brings to SCCM for device management. Just start thinking about that, as Macs can be device managed. They can be taken care of inside of SCCM. A little bit of architecture, about as techy as we're going to go today for the V7 launch. This is where we play. This is where we live, inside of what you already have in place. There's no little dotted line here to an Apple server, kind of hidden behind the screen. When we deploy images, we need your distribution point. We need to see WDS, PXE, and bits. So we're consuming Windows resources for Mac management. So we're needing the console for SCCM, for configuration manager, SMS or SCCM services and management points, and we have an agent that goes on our Mac. So on the left-hand side there, our Parallels proxy, that's our broker between the Mac client and SCCM, handles all the telemetry up and down between the proxy and our Parallels Mac client. The admin console extensions we draw out inside of SCCM, so you see color, branding, icon, things that look like Mac management, that you could do specific for Macs inside of SCCM. We can put our extensions not only, of course, on the Config Manager server, but also on Windows 10. If you've got Configuration Manager that runs on Windows 10, you can add our extensions and you can manage off the server. NetBoot Server Service, that's an optional piece that we put on a distribution point to enable image deployment from that server. Let's see, Mac OS update point role, that's another optional for integration with WSUS for patching. We can bring in metadata. We bring in all the production catalogs from Apple. It synchronizes. We go to the All Software Update group area. We can see Apple patches that we can right-click on and deploy in the same way, including using ADRs. So very nice integration there. Parallels MDM server, that's another optional if you're interested in Apple's device enrollment program. If you're buying your Macs through a hardware reseller as a DEP-enabled Mac, we can do a zero-touch enrollment for that end user, where we take care of all the policy ahead of time inside of SCCM. So they just unbox their Mac on the first day of work. They start working in the background. It's all being managed by the DEP program that we integrate into SCCM. We also build onto the MDM Apple's remote wipe and lock. So you kind of have an a la carte option there. You can do both or do one or the other. So if a Mac is lost or stolen, we can send out a wipe command and then also a lock command. Now, our MDM is not a full-featured, iOS, Android, tablet and phone type of mobile device management. We use it for onboarding and managing Macs. So just let you know that. And then our new feature that we'll be talking about today, Parallels, internet-based computer management proxy. So that way we can enable communication for policy to our Macs no matter where they're located. A little bit of comparison here. Why is native Microsoft SCCM not enough? Okay, so we've got two columns there. SCCM does have an agent for Mac. You can do 5 things with it, as noted. Manual enrollment, might not want to do that if you have hundreds of Macs. Even in that 1% in comparison here for one of our partners is 6,000 seats of Macs, and you may not want to manually enroll that. Hardware and software inventory, no, that's good, right? We want to need to know what's on the device. And then deployment model for applications only, no packaging, only applications, and then being able to push scripts. as configuration items. So, well, that's good. Bash, Python, Ruby, that type of a thing, whatever can run on a Mac. And then support for multi-site hierarchy, primary, secondary site. So it does scale. You just have a lot of manual things you need to do. Well, you'd probably never manage a Windows device like that. We don't think you should manage a Mac like that either. So we really take a more traditional device management kind of idea here that SCCM already does that, for Windows. Let's take advantage of those workflows and manage Windows or manage a Mac in a Windows environment. I mean, it only makes sense if you've got that 1 or 2%, of Macs. Now you're probably going, okay, so there's a comparison here. Why don't you have a column for all those others that I just showed you? I kind of set myself up here, but they've got all these different capabilities, or don't they? I want to really see what that looks like. Well, that's really easy to let you know about. There's only one vendor that takes inventory out of SCCM into their own console, and they don't manage inside of SCCM. So out of that grid with the 29 other Mac management capabilities, they're not in SCCM. That's really the big differentiator there. If you're focused on a 95% Windows management, does standing up a console with dedicated admins that will never use SCCM really provide benefit to an IT shop that really is focused on return on investment on something that possibly from Parallels that could really provide benefit? You really need to consider not only what you're managing, but where you manage it. I mean, if you really want to take advantage of what's already there, SCCM's the place to build this out. Okay, so Microsoft, yeah, you're probably wondering, what do they think about all this, right? Because Microsoft has had the ability for third-party plugins for a long time, and usually that's from people that want to do patching, some really good patch management capabilities for third-party patching that you can plug in to SCCM and other console connectors that can connect into SCCM from plugins. I don't think Microsoft ever thought that somebody would fully manage a Mac inside of SCCM, but that capability is out there, and we just happen to be there first and the only ones doing it. So, what does Microsoft say here? I think you've probably already read this by now, but I really think the last sentence kind of sums up everything exactly. In a really great way. A single team with one set of tools can use the Parallels plugin and help decrease redundancies and reduce OpEx cost. And again, operations isn't known as being a revenue generator. We consume things. We need to manage endpoints. We need to take care of things as new, capabilities, new hybrid solutions come into play. The cloud is only increasing our need to be able to secure endpoints no matter where they're at. And if we can do that, with tools you already have and people you already have, you really do achieve a reduction in redundancies and OpEx cost. All right, finally, here we are. New and key features for Parallels Mac Management V7. All right, the biggest and foremost one here is our support for internet-based client management. What that means is we're able to get a proxy into your DMZ, and that will allow us to manage a management point, a distribution point, in a secure fashion for internet-based clients. So if the Mac leaves your, nice, well-protected, premise of, device management and it's out traveling, going to shows, conferences, or just even at home or a coffee shop, once it gets an internet connection, policy can still take place. So that's what the internet-based client management provides us. Long in coming. We've had that on the roadmap for a long time, and it's just really nice to see it happen now. Another key feature, our hardworking help desk folks have been asking for this for a while. Why can't I image with OSD and task sequences off of the server. So we've built a utility that will build the capabilities to boot a Mac, get out to our task sequence login, and then we can see all of the task sequences that could, maybe today's an HR day or an operations day or a lab day, whatever the image deployment needs to be. We can now use a USB stick to get that started, and that really will help our help desk folks out. Not having to be at the server level to do any of this. We can just plug that stick in and then get that booted up and imaged. Some additional features, non-OSD task sequence support. What that means is we finally cut the cord between image deployment and our task sequences. For the longest time, if we did image deployment, it always followed with additional task sequence steps. Kind of makes sense, right? Post-deployment capabilities. So you want to not only deploy your image, maybe bind it to AD, give it a host name, whatever applications, packages, configuration items, mobile config files, scripts, OSD variables. There's a lot of things we can throw at an image deployment, but now you can do them all a la carte. Maybe you just want to bind a Mac to AD. You can now do that without deploying the image as well. So cut the cord and just makes it more in line with PC task sequences. All right, so task sequence step to restart a computer. So during the workflow of a task sequence, maybe the application or package you're deploying needs a reboot. So we can handle that and then continue on with the task sequence to completion. On the Mac, we can send hardware inventory on request. In our agent that's in System Preferences, there's a little small gear for drop-down menu that we can connect up to SCCM so it refreshes policy, and right below it is one for hardware or inventory on request. So you can click that and it will take inventory and then push that up to SCCM just in an ad hoc fashion. And then the plus, I think that first one is really key. Improved installer. We've added a Wix-based installer, so our upgrade process is not rip and replace. It's in line with what you're doing. So if you've got version 6, you can put the V7 installer on the server, launch it. It will upgrade what's already there, rather than first going to add remove programs and removing, which we were doing before. Sorry about that. So now you can take our installer anywhere that we've installed and it will now just upgrade to the next version. And then another one there for manual client authentication initiation. So just a little bit of addition to how we can get authentication happening back into SCCM for our Macs. All right, some features that aren't version 7, but I think we need to call to attention. It's just a part of what we do. The device enrollment program from Apple, so zero-touch enrollment for the end user. We can set that all up. Just helps facilitate a very easy onboarding first day for them. It then enrolls into SCCM. It gets our agent, fully collection-based management after that. So really nice way to get a Mac into the enterprise. Software metering, we've had that for a few versions now. For the rules and the reports for software metering, so our software procurement people can do true ups and know who's using or maybe who's not using software. Wipe and lock, talked a little bit about that. There's a right click on the left hand side of some of the things that we do. So if you have an MDM and we've got wipe and lock set up, if a Mac's lost or stolen, we can take care of that. And then Q&A time. There we go, folks. That's it for the V7 part. If you've got questions, I'll get to your answers here in a second. Just throw those into the chat window, QA window, and then we'll get to those. But in the meantime, let me tell you, while you're formulating your questions, I know it may take a little bit here, we do have POC capabilities. We've got a Hyper-V image, a VHD, full functioning VHD with a domain with SQL, SCCM, AD, everything fully built out. We just need to add a license to it and then configure a virtual switch. That gets us the capability for device management from a physical Mac into the virtual, and so we can fully set that up for you. You download it, we've got a document shows the needed settings for the switch, and then we can set up a best practice cadence of maybe checking in, talking about things you need to do, would like to do to fully test it out and see what that looks like. So definitely want to be able to get you on your way to deciding, what does it look like to manage Macs in an SCCM environment where you know, are 90% Windows and only have that small percentage. And again, thinking, okay, Macs, yep, definitely a great product, very, well respected, very, very long lasting hardware, in the term of lifespan. We can take advantage of many generations there. Let's fully do that inside of SCCM, and kind of, if you've already got it, might as well leverage what you have in the way of infrastructure and people in that 90-95% Windows environment. All right, so I think we've got some questions showing up, and we'll flip over to that right now. But if anybody needs to leave, thank you for your kind attention. I hope this was of benefit. If you have any questions, my email is down there, telephone number. That is a US-based resource, but we can definitely get you into the proper geographic location for further sales talks or demos, whatever needs to take place in your geography where you're located. All right, so thank you, and we'll get right to your questions.